Hello, everybody, and welcome to One Sustainability. My name is James Rosenstein, a member of One Business World, the hosting platform of One Sustainability. One Sustainability features entrepreneurs, founders, and business leaders who have sustainability as a core component of their overall strategy, presenting on cutting-edge topics and the latest industry developments. Our goal is to educate and inform the global business and entrepreneurial communities on the importance of sustainability and to promote and support sustainable business growth all around the world. Today, we're very pleased to welcome leading global sustainability entrepreneur, advisor, and thought leader, Dr. Ravi Fernando. Dr. Ravi Fernando is the chairman, CEO of Global Strategic Corporate Sustainability Private Limited, which operates in Luxembourg, Ireland, the United Kingdom, Vietnam, China, and Sri Lanka. His career with multinationals spanned from 1981 to 2007 with Unilever, Reckitt Benckiser, SmithKline Beecham International, covering Africa, the Middle East, and Asia in CEO and business development positions. Ravi was the first CEO of the Sri Lanka Institute of Nanotechnology and operations director of the Malaysia Blue Ocean Strategy Institute. Dr. Fernando was the UN Global Compact focal point from 2007 to 2011 and set up the UN Global Compact Sri Lanka network. He serves on the Sri Lanka Sustainable Development Council. He serves on the boards of LOLC Holdings, Ceylon Graphene Technologies Limited, Aitken Spence Plantations, Habitat for Humanity, UN Global Compact Sri Lanka, and Ceylon Asset Management. In September 2007, he won the Global Strategy Leadership Award at the World Strategy Summit in Mumbai. In February 2020, he won the World CSR Leadership Award. Dr. Ravi Fernando has an extensive educational background. He's an alum of the University of Cambridge, the European Business School, INSEAD, and the University of Colombo, and is a fellow in the Chartered Institute of Marketing in the UK. In 2017, he developed the ILA Future Directors Program for the Institute of Directors of Luxembourg, and he also created the 21st Century Board Leadership Model Masterclass. Ravi, it is awesome to have you here with us today to hear more about a sustainability mindset for the 21st century. Thank you and welcome to One Sustainability.
Thank you very much, James, for those warm words of welcome, and a very good day to all of you, whatever time you are logged into this program. Let me start today by telling you that when we talk about sustainability mindset, it is a whole new game plan. And I'm looking forward to sharing with you what sustainability mindset really means in a very simple manner, so that every one of you are going to, in the next 1 hour, be experts in understanding what sustainability mindset is. So let me start with a slide which has inspired me a lot from former President of the United States, Barack Obama. And he said something really interesting. He said, we are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change and the last generation that can do something about it. We are the first generation to feel the impact of climate change. So let's look at how we are going to solve this problem. In terms of the first generation to feel the impact of climate change, Antonio Guterres, the UN Secretary General, said, we are facing a code red for humanity. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, the impact of climate change. President Obama also said, we are the last generation that's going to be able to do something about it. And the next topic that I have here is 21st century leadership, and that is how we are going to achieve that. And I would strongly urge all of you to look at the previous session I also did with One Business World and leading entrepreneurs, where I talked about 21st century leadership. But today's topic is sustainability mindset for the 21st century leadership. So when we talk about 21st century leadership, there are 4 traits of any 21st century leader. And we talked first today about the code red for humanity. What is this code red for humanity? And here is what the code red for humanity is all about. After COP26 in November last year, the world looked at various scenarios in terms of keeping global temperatures under 1.5 degrees centigrade. And the code red for humanity is that every single scenario we are looking at is going to bust the 1.5 degrees centigrade barrier, because even the optimistic best case is a plus 1.8 degrees centigrade. Even if you take into consideration pledges and targets, 2030 targets only, and policies and actions, we are talking of it migrating to plus 2.7 degrees centigrade. So the first question about the code red for humanity is, why are we having such unprecedented temperatures on the planet today? And the answer to that question is there on the left side of this slide. It is because we are basically a planet that is driven by fossil fuels, and fossil fuels are basically coal, petroleum, diesel, natural gas. And as we keep burning these fossil fuels, these are the temperatures that the world is beginning to see. But that is not the code red for humanity. The first code red is that we are having temperatures, but the real code red for humanity is we are now looking at, as soon as we cross a 2 degree centigrade barrier, a 20-foot devastation of global economies. And if we cross 3.7 degrees centigrade, a 140 degree foot rise in global temperatures. And we, ladies and gentlemen, are staring at this code red for humanity. The next part of the presentation is sustainability mindset. And where does that fit in the 21st century leadership model? So I want to draw your attention to the very bottom of that slide. And if you look at the 4 traits of a 21st century leader, number one, first 21st century leaders need to appreciate and mobilize science in strategy. Number 2, it must demonstrate an urgency to impact the code red for business. But today's presentation is about how do we prioritize planet and people above profit? How do we prioritize planet and people above profit? And the only way we are going to do that is if we have a sustainability mindset. And that is how I connect 21st century leadership with sustainability mindset. Now, who was the first person who talked about sustainability mindset? In 1997, a British economist called John Elkington wrote a very important book. And this book was titled Cannibals with Forks, believe it or not. And he called it the triple bottom line of 21st century business. I'm so happy the word 21st century business was written even in 1997, because he realized the only way we are going to have sustainable business is if we have sustainable mindsets. And one of the interesting things he talked about, what he said was, for us to have economic sustainability or economic growth, we need to have strategies that ensure that we have environmental stewardship and we also contribute to social progress. We need to have environmental stewardship and we need to contribute to social progress. Now, one other way to remember this triple bottom line referred to by John Elkington is to refer to the 3 P's of sustainability: planet, people, and profit. Economic growth will give us profit. If we are stewards of the planet, we will have environmental stewardship. If we contribute in our business strategies to social progress, then we have people who are absolutely inspired and living in a better place than they used to before. So, first important point I want to make today to every one of you listening is sustainability mindset is the third most important trait of a 21st century leader. And the only way you're going to cultivate a sustainability mindset or a triple bottom line mindset is if you are able to balance and ensure that profits are generated by first putting planet and people before you start looking at simply, I will make this decision based only on profit. And that is not sustainability mindset. That is what I would call single bottom line profit mindset. And single bottom line profit mindset is never going to succeed in the 21st century. Businesses will make profits for a while, but they will get wiped out because you cannot keep destroying the planet and expecting your profitability to continue. So that is the introduction to sustainability mindset for the 21st century as created by John Elkington, who is a very important thought leader in the subject of sustainability mindset. Now, what I'm going to do is connect sustainability mindset with the issues of the world. And the top 10 global risks by severity, as highlighted by the World Economic Forum, are given there in order. Between 2020 and 2022, it was the same issues that were highlighted. But now I'm going to creatively connect those issues with sustainability. So look at the top 3 issues. Climate action failure. You could argue that climate action failure is a failure of leadership, and leadership that is not sustainability mindset. If you had sustainability mindset leaders, you will not have climate action failure. Number 2, extreme weather incidents is to do with the planet, is to do with environmental stewardship. And I already mentioned to you the reason we are experiencing unprecedented extreme weather events and unprecedented warming of the planet is because of the simple reason that we have not exited fossil fuels. And even today, even as we look at some of the challenges that have come out, that we are all faced with a barrel of oil now hitting past $130 as a result of the Russian invasion in Ukraine. And as one of the key suppliers are now under pressure. What is really interesting is that the European Union, even though they would love to exit fossil fuels as fast as possible, they cannot do that because they are so dependent on natural gas, and 40% of the natural gas of the European Union is coming from Russia. So you can see you're intertwined in the dependence of fossil fuels, which is A, doing harm to the planet, B, you are not able to move out. And why have we not moved out before this? Because we've known that we had to move out of fossil fuels from 1987. And then you can see it is the climate action failure of leaders. The third issue here is biodiversity loss, which is once again to do with environmental stewardship. So the first 3 issues that are the global risks in terms of severity are all around the planet, all around to do with environmental stewardship. And now we go to the second 3 issues, which are highlighted in terms of global risks: social cohesion erosion, livelihood crisis, infectious diseases. Let's look at livelihood crisis. The world has experienced 2 years of unprecedented livelihood crisis thanks to COVID-19. Right now, the people of Ukraine and the people living in and around that region are having a livelihood crisis because their livelihood, their regular livelihood is all disrupted. Infectious diseases continue to pummel the planet. And when we look at these 3 issues, they are all linked to the red of this image, which is basically impacting social progress. In fact, all 3 of them are inhibiting social progress. And that is to do with people. Then we look at the next 2 issues, human environmental damage and natural resource crisis. The human environmental damage is being caused by us deforesting at an unprecedented rate, knocking down forests for all kinds of reasons, including food. But if you keep destroying the natural habitat of the planet, if you keep destroying forest cover, which we have done to the tune of 70% of global forest cover is today completely destroyed, then this in turn creates an issue because that doesn't demonstrate environmental stewardship. We come to the one blue item on this number 10 list, which is debt crisis. The world is facing various levels of debt, and that is linked to economic growth. And if we don't manage debt, at some point in time, that will absolutely devastate economic growth. And the last one is to do with geo-economic confrontation. And we are facing geo-economic confrontation with what is happening in Europe right now, because that is an example of how geopolitics and economics have begun to impact each other. So what I'm trying to do here is to get all of you understanding what sustainability mindset is. And now I have connected the triple bottom line or sustainability mindset with the issues of the planet. And you can see out of those issues, at least 5 of the issues have to do with environmental stewardship or the planet. So if you want to be a 21st century leader, you need to pay attention to the 5 issues that we have been compromising up till now, and we continue to compromise even in the 21st century. And that is why we are now experiencing unprecedented extreme weather incidents. And this is a climate action failure in terms of leadership. We must also understand that social progress can never happen if we don't have leaders who understand that their business models must not only contribute to fantastic profits, but also their business model must contribute to social progress. If companies decide the only progress we need is the progress of shareholders or the few owners, we are then going to be compromising the livelihoods and the well-being of the majority of the world's population. Social progress is where everybody in society is benefiting from that business strategy in some way or another, not simply with a salary, but way beyond the salary. So now let's look at what is a triple bottom line leadership and a sustainability mindset leader. How will they perform? Let me tell you an easy way to remember this. If you have a business model that is generating economic growth and profitability, and let me start by telling all of you, no business can survive if they don't have a business model that is generating profits and having economic growth. No business model is ever going to survive. So I want to emphasize the importance of economic growth, economic profitability, but here's the caveat. If you're going to do so at any cost, then I would call you a 19th century leader who only is interested in economic growth and economic profit at any cost. But if you are a sustainability mindset leader, here's the big difference. You will have a business model that is driving economic growth, that is driving profitability, but you will ensure that that business model is totally understanding the importance of environmental stewardship and zero compromise of the environment. Because if you are a company leader or a business leader who's putting profit before planet, I would call you a 19th century leader. But if you are a leader who understands, and you can see here very clearly that we have already a situation where majority of the issues are to do with the planet, are to do with the environment. So you cannot be someone who is compromising the planet and delivering profit. If you are a sustainability mindset leader, you will give significant priority to ensure that your planet strategy or your environmental stewardship strategy is absolutely focused on protecting and regenerating the environment, not destroying it and hoping and praying that we have another planet in a few years' time. So economic growth and profitability strategy that contributes to the regeneration and protection of the environment and ensures that you do not destroy the planet as you deliver profits. But there's one other big deal when it comes to a triple bottom line sustainability mindset leader. That business model that is delivering profits, that is delivering economic growth, must also contribute to the social progress of the country, to the social progress of all your employees, and the social progress of the communities in which you operate. The last thing you want to hear is there's a company operating in a town in any country in the world, but the people in that community are all the poorest in the world. That means that company has dramatically failed that community. So in closing, in terms of the sustainability mindset, which is what I want to get fully integrated and ingrained in you, an economic growth and profitability strategy that has clearly built on environmental stewardship, first and foremost, and contributes to social progress. If you have a business model like that, then you are clearly driving a sustainable business, and you are driving the 21st century leadership through sustainability. And that is why I spent so much time trying to get this key message of who is a sustainability mindset leader. And now I hope it is very clear to you. And today, before the end of this session, I'm going to share with you an amazing example of a company whose leader clearly exudes the word sustainability mindset in every decision the leader has taken. And what is most important is this company has been a shining light in the United States of America and in most of the countries in the world, simply because this leader had a sustainability mindset going back 30, 40 years. So to be a 21st century leader, you don't have to be born in the 21st century. You don't have to live in the 21st century. You just need to have a mindset that is 21st century. And I can tell you, you can be any age you want, but you can have a sustainability mindset if you balance the 3 Ps of ensuring that you put planet and people before profit in your business strategy. So let's move on. But what are we doing in the world today? And this is important for you to understand. Are we putting planet before profit, or are we putting profit before planet? I have already shared with you the reason we are facing unprecedented extreme weather incidents and the 20 hottest years ever recorded on the planet. And we are getting close to a tipping point of plus 1.5 degrees centigrade, which leads to nearly a 20-foot sea level rise, which will wipe out quite a bit of the global economic gain, is because a majority of the companies in the world and majority of the countries in the world are yet continuing to put profit before planet. And can you imagine, even as I speak today to you, that the world spends $5.9 trillion per annum to subsidize fossil fuels so that every one of us can buy fossil fuels cheaper. We are subsidizing the very cause of the climate emergency. Now, how can that be sustainability mindset leadership? Look at the figures. We are spending $14.5 billion per day to subsidize fossil fuels. It works out to nearly $10 million per minute. And we are spending $168,000 per second to subsidize the very thing that is causing the climate emergency and the code red for humanity. One of the important facts I want to communicate to you is, if fossil fuel companies continue to do that and nations continue to do that, we are going to have a code red for humanity in a devastated and unlivable planet. So this is one thing that is totally, I would call this the compromise of the century. That in the 21st century, nations are subsidizing fossil fuels to the tune of $5.9 trillion per annum. It was $5.2 trillion a few years ago. We are now subsidizing it to the tune of $5.9 trillion. What are we doing here? We are putting profit before planet. I talked about putting planet and people before profit. Here's what is happening. I'm going to give you one more example before I go into solutions. So, one of the interesting reports that have come out in 2021 is a report called Banking on Climate Chaos. This report came out in 2021 and basically looks at the banking sector and how much the banking sector is investing in fossil fuels. And the sad news is, when you look at the list of banks that are investing in fossil fuels versus green projects, the majority of these banks are probably investing 60-70% on fossil fuel projects and a 1/3 of it on green projects. So JP Morgan, Citigroup, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, HSBC, Barclays, Mitsubishi, Royal Bank of Canada, Deutsche Bank, and Sumitomo, all of them are spending significantly more money on fossil fuel projects versus green projects. Now, is that putting planet before profit or putting profit before planet? You know the answer. I've given you two examples of today where we are subsidizing fossil fuels, and I call it the compromise of the century, and definitely not sustainability mindset leadership. And once again, in the banking sector, how banks keep funding fossil fuels. Now, this is all doom and gloom. Let's now get focused on solutions. So if you are running a company today, whatever business you're running today, you will have a carbon footprint. Just like you will have your footprint, just like you will have your fingerprint, you will have a carbon footprint. And the carbon footprint is the sum of all emissions of carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases, which were induced by your company's activities within a given time frame. And if you look at the chart there, you can see the biggest carbon emitters of the world today are China, followed by USA, followed by European Union, followed by India, and followed by Russia. So these are the countries with the biggest carbon footprints. And if you are now running a business, your job is to ensure you have a sustainability mindset. You have already understood why we need a sustainability mindset and a sustainable business strategy. You need to be ensuring that your carbon footprint is getting reduced, and you are part of the solution of the global drive for sustainable planet versus you are a contributor, like the fossil fuel companies and some of the banks I mentioned, to the problem of climate emergency and code red. You want to be a part of the solution to the climate emergency. Now, are there companies which are doing that? I can tell you I'm very excited when I look at 21st century leadership, and when I look at, we have already come up with nearly 11 case studies of amazing leaders of the world today who are leading their companies, reducing their carbon footprints, and turning those companies and businesses into positive action for the climate. So which are these companies? Which are these countries? Today, I'm going to share with you the story of one such company. But before that, I want you to think a little about how does a company end up with carbon emissions? What contributes to their carbon emissions? So let's just think a little about this, because I want to make this so simple that by the end of this session, every single one of you who probably have heard these words used 100 and 1,000 times are going to be totally understanding this subject, so that you now can make a decision and become part of the solution. So if you have a company and you have a manufacturing you have a big manufacturing facility, and let's say you're making some food product, just for argument's sake. Now, you will source the resources needed for that food product from various plantations, from various parts of the world. Now, the first question is, are you part of destroying the planet, or are you part of regenerating the planet? If you said, okay, Brazil, destroy the Amazon, grow soya beans, I'm going to buy your soya beans, and I'm going to make some amazing products with your soya beans in my manufacturing outlet. I want you to pause for a moment and ask the question, have I put profit before planet, or have I put planet before profit? If your business model is destroying the Amazon in the hope that you will make profit, it is very clear your supply chain is now part of not the solution, but part of the problem of the climate emergency. And you have decided in your company's business strategy and business model to basically ignore your carbon footprint, because your carbon footprint is not confined to the carbon footprint of simply what happens in your factory and your headquarters. It is also the combined sum of all carbon emissions wherever you operate and wherever you have a supply chain, and whatever happens in that supply chain is also part of the sum of all carbon emissions to your company's activities. And this is one thing you've got to remember. So let's say you have now come up with an alternate strategy. You have told the Brazilians, you shall not destroy the Amazon. You will go to a plantation that is probably already existing and say, we will buy your product on the basis that you will continue to reforest and increase the forest cover with every ton of product you ship to us. And you tie the supply chain to the part of solving the planet's problem and not becoming part of the pollution, but part of the solution. You will then have to ask the question, once I make this product, what kind of energy sources am I using to manufacture this product in my factory? Am I happily using coal power to charge my factories? Am I using diesel and petroleum-based energy to charge my factory? Or have I decided that every single factory I own, every single factory that works for me is going to be charged with, and the energy is going to come from renewable energy sources? I'm happy to say that companies like Google, that companies like Tesla, companies like Microsoft have all understood this simple concept, and a majority of the energy requirements in those companies are today sourced from renewable energy sources, either wind or solar and battery, and a combination of this. So once you have your product in your supply chain, next thing is how do you convert that product, and what energy source are you using to convert that product? Now, you've got to be, if you're a triple bottom line leader, and if you're a sustainability mindset leader, you will once again put planet before profit and make sure you're a company run with renewable energy sources. We need to run countries which are run by renewable energy sources. And the good news for a lot of us is there is now an awakening amongst most countries. And even though I look at what is happening in the world today with the geopolitical mess that we are in with this invasion, but at least whilst I empathize with all the people of Ukraine and whatever suffering they're going through, it breaks my heart to see these images on television, ladies and gentlemen. But one of the interesting debates that is now taking place as this issue becomes a big issue is how do we exit fossil fuels? How do we move away from natural gas? How do we move away from dependence on petroleum? And one of the interesting comments I listened to yesterday, as I was listening to the European Union chief, the Ursula von der Leyen, she said, we have to exit fossil fuels and completely exit our dependence on fossil fuels. And this may now get accelerated as a result of what we are facing today. I'm not for a moment saying this is a good thing that has happened, but we need to look for a silver lining even in the worst of and saddest of days. And there is a silver lining I'm beginning to see, because nation after nation is beginning to realize we can't be paying $140 a barrel of oil when it was $60, $70 a barrel of oil the other day. We can't be paying $300 a barrel of oil. We'll completely be no longer profitable. So if we want to have a business model that is profit generating and growing the economy, we need to have an energy source that we can count on, that is the lowest cost energy source today. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is renewable energy. So renewable energy resurgence is beginning to happen even in spite of all the crises we are facing. So I've spent time trying to show you how you can be ignoring sometimes your carbon footprint. You can no longer ignore the carbon footprint. Even if you ignored it before our One Business World session today, from this moment onward, you cannot ignore your carbon footprint. You need to understand with expert advice what makes up my carbon footprint. What percentage of my carbon footprint is generated in the supply chain? What percentage is generated in the product? What percentage is generated in distribution? What percentage is generated when a consumer uses it? Because once the consumer uses your product or service and then throws it into a dustbin, that is the beginning of another problem, because you are now contributing to pollution. And you're contributing to pollution if you are a company in the soft drink business, for example. If you are a Coca-Cola or a Pepsi-Cola, and you had a great profit model up till that point, and then you ended up having all this plastic pollution that is today a massive global problem, then you have not solved your carbon footprint problem. Because you cannot say, I have forgotten about it, the consumer has used my product, and he or she has decided that it's going to be thrown into the ocean or thrown into a landfill. No, your problem remains, because your carbon emissions continue, because a plastic bottle can last 200 to 500 years without disintegrating, which means you have contributed to a problem. And one of the reasons you need to worry about single-use plastics, not all plastics, single-use plastics, as contributing to the carbon footprint, is because single-use plastics take an amazingly unprecedented long time to disintegrate, and they are not biodegradable. And one other thing, plastics is made from petroleum. So if you want to encourage the petroleum industry, you need to keep buying plastics. If you want to ensure that the petroleum industry moves to renewable energy, then you need to be part of the solution and looking for solutions as opposed to contributing to the pollution. So now I've spent some time making you understand how you can be a leader who puts planet and people before profit. Now, let me tell you something. I've been running businesses for some of the best multinationals. And I can tell you, if you have any business, whatever business you are in, if you are going to use some resources, if you are going to end up using any resource, the chances are you're going to have an impact on the planet, which is negative. There can be no business where you have zero negativity, because there'll be some impact. Now, what you have to do is to make sure you look at all the options you have in terms of that product and service and reduce the carbon emissions to its bottom line and compensate for it, compensate for that impact, negative impact on the planet by your renewable energy drive, so that that then begins to compensate for the impact you are having on any product or service. So become sustainable mindset leaders of tomorrow. You can no longer sit on the sidelines and say, everybody else is doing that. Now, the reason you should not do things, you should change this attitude, is the people who are doing this are 19th century leaders who are ignoring science and who are ready to compromise profit before planet, compromise profit before people. You and I can no longer be that, because we have future generations. We need to make sure this planet is livable 25 years from now, not destroyed in the next 3 to 5 years. So is anybody doing this? Is anybody really triple bottom line mindset leaders who are able to balance the issues, understand the importance of economic growth, but give equal emphasis to the environmental stewardship so that we have eco-efficiency, who understand that every decision we take that impacts the environment also has impact on society. And there we call socio-environmental impacts. And when we talk of global warming and air pollution, which is killing 7 million people per annum, thanks to burning so much of fossil fuels, and global warming that is basically heating the planet up, we are now beginning to see environmental refugees and environmental migration at an unprecedented level. And the World Bank, in their report Groundswell, which came out about 3-4 years back, talks about 143 million environmental refugees in the coming years. This is a catastrophe. We cannot ignore this. And if we think the crisis we are seeing now unfold in our television sets a problem, just imagine if we think 3 to 5 million people moving from one country to other countries is a problem. Now look at 143 million people moving. 143 million people moving from the southern hemisphere nations to the northern hemisphere nations. How will those nations cope with that? You also saw when we compromise economic growth versus profitability versus social progress, we end up with health emergencies and climate emergencies. So is any company worthy of doing the right thing? And I told you we have 11 amazing case studies, but I'm going to share with you one that I'm particularly inspired by. And as I share this case with you, I want you to think about this gentleman who started this company and ask the question, where did he become a 21st century leader, even in the 18th century and the 19th century? How did he become that? How did he ensure that he put planet and people before profit in his entire business model? And ladies and gentlemen, the business I'm about to talk to you about is a business you know well, because it's one of the most trusted brands in the United States. And who is this gentleman? The brand is Patagonia. And this gentleman is Yvon Chouinard, who I have the greatest respect for. What is interesting about this gentleman was he was very much an adventure sportsman when he started his business, an environmentalist and an outdoorsman. And he decided that he was going to give 10% of his profits to grassroots environmental organizations. And he made sure that 1% of all sales, he called it earth tax. He called it earth tax 35 years ago, long before John Elkington created the word sustainability, long before the term triple bottom line was even mentioned. Here was Yvon Chouinard saying, I will put planet before profit, and I will ensure that whatever profit I generate, I'm going to put it back into the planet. Now, is he a sustainability mindset leader? Now, here's an interesting quote from this gentleman. Here's what he says. The capitalist ideal is to grow your company. In other words, make crazy profits. CEOs make crazy take-home pays, and the company is growing. Everybody's making money. The shareholders are having an amazing whale of a time, and focus on making it as profitable as possible. And this is what a majority of what I call non-sustainable 21st century, non-sustainable mindset leaders are doing in running their business. But he said, then when you cash out, you become a philanthropist. It's only when the company is about to close or when you've made your money, you suddenly become a philanthropist. We believe a company has a responsibility to do that all along for the sake of the employees and for the sake of the planet. So, Yvon Chouinard, a gentleman who put planet before profit in this amazingly successful company, Patagonia, in his category, he is by a mile the most profitable company in his category. What else does he do? He even has a 1% earth tax. Here are some of the amazing things that Patagonia has done. They have committed to being 100% carbon neutral for the entire supply chain by 2025. Why 2025? And even his other comment, by 2025, all our apparel products will be 100% recycled, reclaimed, and renewed. By 2025, our packaging will be 100% reusable, home compostable, renewable, or easily recyclable. And the amazing thing is he's already nearly 80 to 90% there already with his business model. And look at his advertising. He talks about, don't buy this jacket. He's not telling people run to the store and buy a new jacket. He's saying, don't buy this jacket. And what is he really saying? If you have bought a Patagonia jacket before this, please don't go buy the new one. Bring your old Patagonia jacket back. I will renew it. I will repair it and give this product looking like new once again back to you. Now, this is putting planet before profit. And what else does he say? Patagonia, when he talks about leadership, he is clearly a 21st century leader. And how he monitors the business, how he manages the emissions, how he is so concerned about the carbon footprint of his company, how he's recycling, how he has made initiatives to do that, and giving to the people, giving to environmental organizations, giving to the workers. He's a key activist in this subject. He is about truth and striving for the future of this planet. And it is great to see that a company like Patagonia is so profitable, but is also so committed to the 21st century leadership in the world. What else does he do? He has what is known as a worn wear program. By keeping our clothing in use just 9 additional months, we can reduce the related carbon, waste, and water footprint by 20 to 30%. So a few minutes back, I said, every one of us must be concerned with our carbon footprints. We need to be reducing our carbon footprints. And what has he done? He has made repair as a radical act, and today has about 40,000 repair stores which are repairing his product. So here we go, a company that is walking the talk in every system, in every cycle of the business, and especially in the supply chain. Patagonia aims to make items last a lifetime through high quality and repairability. Just pause on that comment for a moment. How many businesses do you know today who can say that? How many businesses are making products that last a lifetime? Most companies are looking for the shortest life cycle humanly possible so they can get you an iPhone 13 or an iPhone 14 within 3 months, sometimes 6 months of the previous one. Is that a sustainable business model? No, it is not. Because just imagine the harm to the planet as we remove the resources from it to make those products and then have the shortest possible lifetime. I want to make a confession. I have nearly 4 to 5 smartphones in my house, and I'm ashamed of that. And I have now made a decision I will not be continuously doing this. And the last iPhone I bought was iPhone 7. And now there are 6 iPhones of 7 iPhones after that, because I suddenly realized, how can I be preaching sustainability and be part of the problem of contributing to unsustainability in terms of reuse, in terms of products and services that are constantly being replaced? Gone are the days when we bought a car and we said, this car is going to be with me all my life. We will need some repairs. We will need to tune it up. We might need to replace the battery and the tires. Now, if you go for an electric car, hopefully that will last a much longer lifetime than we have today. And there are issues with those too. I'm not saying everyone has fixed every problem, but if I have to choose between driving a fossil fuel driven car that is heating up the planet and an electric car that is not, I will go for the electric car option, because at least I'm not contributing to the amazing heating of the planet and the code red for humanity. But the key point I wanted to make as I read this last point was making business and items last a lifetime through high quality, number one, high quality and repairability, serviceability. Is that a 21st century mindset? Is that sustainability mindset? Is that putting planet before profit? Absolutely it is. And that is why his strategy in Patagonia is repair is a radical act. Now, what else do we know about this company? I have now given you a reasonably powerful case study to prove to you, you can have a business model that is generating profit, that is generating economic growth year on year, but is totally committed to the planet, totally committed to the environment, puts planet before profit, and is also committed to people and is driving society, driving the improvement of society by harming the planet to the least possible extent. So Patagonia is a world-class 21st century led sustainability mindset company. And I picked this case for today's session because I couldn't think of a better case to illustrate the point of sustainability mindset than how Patagonia works things out. And I can tell you, Patagonia has about 200-300 suppliers to their product line all over the world. You can go to the Patagonia website and know the carbon emissions and the carbon footprint of every single one of their suppliers, because their figures are monitored almost daily by Patagonia to make sure that none of them are driving a company or getting supplies from a company who is causing problems to the planet. So making sure your suppliers, your supply chain is committed to sustainability is equally important. Now, I want to wind up today by telling you a simple strategy how to become a planet and people before profit by looking at simply 3 major UN Sustainable Development Goals. Now, I know there are 17, but I want to give you a strategy today that fine-tunes your thinking to focus on 3 goals and 2 goals which are combined, and I would therefore call it 4 goals, as opposed to 17 goals. If you want to be a planet and people sustainability mindset leader, here are the 4 goals you need to focus on in your business, in your strategy, in your company. Number 1, goal number 7. You've got to go from polluting fossil fuel energy driven businesses and transportation to an affordable and clean energy solution. And it is when you have achieved this, you have begun your journey to reduce your carbon footprint. So number 1, an affordable clean energy, goal number 7. Number 2, ensure that your company in its entire life cycle is contributing to responsible consumption and production. Responsible consumption and production. In other words, you're not going to have products and services ending up in landfills and contributing to the great Pacific Ocean plastic patch, which is now apparently the size of a couple of islands. And that then is irresponsible consumption and production. Your company's entire supply chain from cradle to cradle must be managed in terms of responsible consumption and production. And if you have an area which is not responsible, then if you are a 21st century leader, if you want to be a sustainability mindset leader, focus on developing a solution to that. Goal number 12. The third goal that you need to focus on is ensure industry, innovation, and infrastructure. And I want to add a word there, sustainable innovation and not innovation, because you can end up innovating products that are going to be really hitting the planet in a bad way. You want to be committed to sustainable innovation. When I look at Tesla's strategy, it is sustainable innovation. It is not just innovation, it is sustainable innovation. Does Tesla yet have areas to improve? Of course it has areas to improve, but it is weaning the world out of fossil fuel driven cars into electric vehicles, which are less of a problem to the planet. So the 3 major goals in any company strategy, which is led by a 21st century leader, are goal number 7, goal number 12, and goal number 9. Affordable renewable energy, get to 100% renewable energy driven, have a business model which has responsible consumption, cradle to cradle, ensure that you're driving sustainable innovation and having sustainable infrastructure and sustainable industry. These are the 3 frontline goals. And let me go to the extent of telling you, if you are a 21st century leader, if you want to be a sustainability mindset leader, your corporate strategy, your national strategy, your business strategy, your organization strategy must have these 3 goals front and center in your strategy. Last goal is, I have combined 2 goals together because one doesn't exist without the other. Number 1, life on land in terms of forest covers, trees, and everything to do that is green and nature. If you destroy nature, you will not have water. If you don't have water, you will not have forest cover. So I'm just telling you, these 2 are intertwined goals. Goal number 15 and goal number 6, no forest cover, no water, no water, no forest cover. So we need to see these 2 goals as one and ensure our business strategy that puts planet before profit is ensuring that these 2 goals are looked after, are protected, are regenerated. How did the Middle East end up with having no water? Why is it that the Middle East today has to basically desalinate seawater to the tune of 90% of their water requirements? Because they destroyed all the forest cover they had. If you go back in time, we used to talk about the cedars of Lebanon, the cedar, the amazing the trees that grew in Egypt. They cut all of these to make ships and start sailing the ocean. And as a result, we end up having forests all destroyed and deserts replacing them. You, as a 21st century sustainability mindset leader, these two goals have to be in any corporate strategy that you're driving. So I have made life very simple for you if you want to be a sustainability mindset leader. And as I get to my last slide, I want to go back to where I started. I told you the global risks of the world, 5 of the global risks of the world are to do with environmental stewardship. 3 of the goals are to do with social progress. 5 plus 3, 8 of the global risks in severity are to do with the planet and people. If 8 of the 10 risks of the world are to do with planet and people, then you had better put planet and people before profit. Otherwise, you are going to be solving one of the 9 problems and creating major problems for the other 9. This is the way I'd like you to remember today's session. Sustainability mindset is about an economic growth and profitability model that gives the planet its due stewardship and helps people progress in society. And you always make sure that every single decision you take has put planet and people before profit. If you and your board of directors and all your C-suite managers and your divisional managers and your leaders of your business cannot honestly look straight into each other's eyes and say, we have put planet and people before profit in every single one of our business decisions, then today is the day I want you to change and begin a new journey to become a 21st century leader who puts planet and people before profit. And I just want to say thank you for your time. And it's exactly 1 hour on my clock from the time I started. And I'm going to hand you over to James. James, over to you and Stelios.
Well, Ravi, thank you so much for this such convincing and impressive presentation. Before we finish, I just want to ask you a couple of questions because, as we know, there are certain barriers, one of which is all that is involved in the transition from fossil fuel energy to renewable energy. A lot of places, governments, regions say this. We would like to move to more renewable energy. However, the sources of solar energy, of wind energy, are not enough to replace what we have. And there's also the huge issue of infrastructure. In other words, if you have great wind turbines off the coast in a state, in the United States, for example, how are you going to transfer that energy from the coast to the western part of the state? There are huge infrastructure issues that need to be addressed urgently. And also, when you're building solar panels and all that, once they need to be recycled, that has to be handled very responsibly because a lot of the issues, a lot of the ingredients and the materials in these systems are potentially dangerous. So that is one issue, which is how to make renewable energy much more available, much faster. And then you have the resistance, which is often political resistance. Because if you are living in a state where thousands of people are earning a decent living in coal factories, how are you going to convince them to move to something else? Now, there has been evidence that there are many more jobs in solar energy and all that, but it's very difficult to convince governments, governors, companies to move, partly because they don't see how it's going to benefit them, and also partly because they don't like change. They don't want to make any big changes which would affect their business system and all that. So we all realize how urgent it is to move on, but there are these barriers, and how best to confront them.
Excellent.
Yeah, this is a huge.
Thanks, James. You have actually zeroed in a few minutes, all the three major issues the world is confronted today. And I'm really impressed that in those few words, you captured all the issues almost without leaving anyone out. Thank you for that. So let's start with the first issue. The first issue I see is about global leadership, 21st century leadership versus 19th century leadership. Now, when we talk about making decisions as a 21st century leader, we need to look at the medium to long term in every decision we take. Unfortunately, majority of the decisions are being taken today at a national level, at a business level, in terms of short-term and quarterly profits. So the first big mindset change we need, if you have sustainability mindset, James, is that leaders have to recycle themselves, completely refocus themselves from being, I am going to be the king of the road and deliver amazing quality profits for the next 3 quarters, and I'm going to get the best bonus I've ever got, to I am a CEO. I have been given the stewardship of this company. My role is not simply to deliver amazing profits every quarter, but to also have a company that is sustainable in the medium to long term. How do I ensure that decision is taken? And the same must be taken by national leaders, where we have national leaders who unfortunately have a term in office. So business leaders don't have a term in business. I mean, when we start a business, we say, let's keep this business going for 50 years. Let's make it go for 100 years. We don't start by saying, okay, we just got 8 years and we've got to make the biggest amount of profits and run away. So there is a fundamental difference between a business leader and what I would call a political leader or a national leader. So the national leaders, when they make decisions, they are under pressure just as much as business leaders are under pressure to deliver quality profits. The national leaders have to give profits, have to deliver on societal issues in the short to medium term, as opposed to any other term. So they've got to put people before profit. They've got to put people before planet in every decision they take, as opposed to people and planet before profit. So the next question is, are they thinking of their 4 years in office, or their 8 years in office, or are they thinking of this nation and saying, America as a nation has lasted 250 years. It's got to last another 150 years to 200 years. What am I doing during my time in office as a senator, as a politician, as a vice president, as a GOP member, as whoever? What am I doing in my term of office that is strategic for the sustenance of this great nation way beyond my 4 years in office? So that is the first fundamental change that has to happen. And I call it a change from a 19th century short-term, deliver profits at any cost. I've got to make sure that these guys vote for me in the next election, to, am I being a steward of the planet? Am I being a steward of this great nation? Am I having strategic mindset for this country or not? So that's the first one. So the second issue you brought up, James, quite brilliantly, was how do we move from fossil fuels to renewables like solar power and wind power in the short to medium term, when we have invested so much of time and money and energy and infrastructure, like the European Union has now is beginning to discover they can't just switch off the Russian gas taps because they have invested so much money in Nord Stream 1, and Nord Stream 1 took probably 10 years, 5 to 7 years to build, and now they have nice gas supplies coming from the refinery from the source right the way into the nations. Now there's a massive infrastructure that has already been invested in. So are we now going to stop this whole investment? We are going to have a massive problem if we do that. And how do we move from, we have built car companies which are all running on petroleum and diesel. Now you are telling us to go electric. What happens to the 100,000, 2 million, 5 million employees who are employed all over the world for us in factories that are making fossil fuel driven vehicles? And these questions are real questions. So I want to tell you today, I have never seen a fossil fuel company as an enemy. I have never seen a company driving the fossil fuel vehicles as enemy. I see them as companies, or a company like Saudi Aramco or Chevron or ExxonMobil. I mean, they're so invested in infrastructure in terms of the whole fossil fuel business. Now, how do we help them? I believe the role of government is to help fossil fuel companies and businesses to migrate, transit from where they are to where they should be. I think the big investments in national investments should be how to help these companies make the migration. Because they know if they make the migration, the common thing is they will yet remain energy companies. But the difference is they are going to be energy companies not selling fossil fuels. They are going to be energy companies selling renewable energy. So how do you incentivize a fossil fuel company and say, we are going to be part of the infrastructure investment you need? We are going to give you tax breaks as you do that investment. We are going to ensure that in the short to medium term, whatever incentives you want, we are going to give them to you. We are going to help these car companies to migrate to become electric car companies. What is the short-term issues? What are the medium-term issues? How can we as government be part of the solution? And I think that is what is missing in the world today. The world needs to not look at companies in fossil fuels like the Saudi Aramco's, the ExxonMobils, the Chevrons, the BPs, the Shells as enemies, which is what unfortunately they are being now presented to the world as. And of course, they are fighting back with the Gazproms and Adanis of the world. They're basically saying, okay, you think you can take us on? Try it. And you ain't going to win no matter what you do, because we have such influence. We will make sure, whether it's COP26 or COP27 or the next Paris Agreement or the whatever agreement, we will ensure the word exiting fossil fuels is not in that agenda. We will ensure you will continue with fossil fuels till 2050 and 2070, whether you like it or not. Now, that is because we have turned these companies into enemies. We need to have a new 21st century mindset to help them migrate and move this infrastructure into the infrastructure that is needed. And you also then talked about batteries and solar power. So let me give some great news to everyone. Today, solar plus battery and wind plus battery is cheaper than coal power in the world already. And it is already on par or getting cheaper than fossil fuels like petroleum and diesel already, even for running your thermal power plants. Now, why aren't we moving them? If it's cheaper, the only reason we are not moving is because of the cost of change, the cost of infrastructure. It is so significant, we can't begin to do it even if it's cheaper. There was always a question of, is it cheaper? It is cheaper now. So now I think the 21st century leadership of nations must change the game, must begin to help these companies make the migration. And in terms of the solar panels you talked about and the responsible management of these things in terms of a life cycle. So generally, a solar panel has a 20 to 25-year life cycle. That is the general thinking. But the new perovskite solar panels that are coming out to the market with nearly a 40% efficacy versus the 16 to 19% efficacy we had, already have built into it a recyclable opportunity. So now the secret is to move into the 21st century technologies. And I can put my hand on heart and say the 21st century technologies of renewables are amazing, whether it's smart grids with AI and renewable energy, whether it is algorithms that tell you how to manage your peak hours with your non-peak hours. Today, this is scientifically sorted out. So the technology is all available, James. All we need is 21st century leaders of nations, 21st century leaders of business saying, I want to be part of the solution and not be part of the pollution. I want to be part of moving forward and not holding back, because if I hold back as a fossil fuel company, if I hold back as a nation which says, I will be driven by fossil fuels till 2070, what I'm really doing is jeopardizing the planet. And that simple understanding is sustainability mindset. We need sustainability mindset leaders at national level, at business level, to put the planet and people before profits. Because if we continue this untenable pathway, by 2025, we would have begun to lose 30 to 40% of our GDP of the world of $94 trillion. And all the profits that everybody made, the amazing quarterly profits we made, would all get wiped away in one flash. And that is not what we want. We need leaders to realize they and their children and their future generations are going to outlast us. If they are going to outlast us, it is our stewardship of the planet that is going to give them an inhabitable planet. Do we want our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren to look back on 2030, 2025, 2022 and say, you know, my dad's generation, my grandfather's generation, my great-grandfather's generation, they ignored everything the science said. They continued to burn fossil fuels. They had all the solutions available. But now, guess what? I am finding it difficult to find some fresh air to breathe. I am looking all over the planet to drink some fresh water. I'll give them $1 million if I can be assured of fresh water supply for 1 month of the year, not for 6 months of the year. Because we are basically devastating the planet to a level that it is going to be unlivable and untenable. So we have to rise to the occasion. Our leaders have to rise to the occasion and become sustainability mindset 21st century leaders, James. Otherwise, we would basically leave a future generation that is struggling for breath, struggling for air, struggling for water, fresh water, and worst of all, not having any food to eat. Because just imagine if the Ukraine crisis is already raised oil prices from $60 to $140, and now they're talking of might go to $200, and food prices have already risen 60%. Why? Because Ukraine is one of the great bread baskets of the world. It's the biggest exporter of wheat and so many commodities, corn, wheat. I mean, they're in the top 10 in about so many things. Now, just imagine if a war can disrupt the supply of energy and food. Just imagine if the planet is wiped out due to sea level rise. It is war into the power 150. So the devastation is much, much worse than what we are seeing now. And this is the devastation we have to be educating our business leaders about, our national leaders about. You've got to be part of the solution and not part of the pollution. I hope I've answered all the 4 points you made.
You sure have, and we could continue this discussion for a long time. It's so important. Anyway, we want to thank you so much again for your time, your presentation, and to be part of the One Sustainability series. We thank you very much and look forward to talking to you again soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much, James. Thank you very much, Stelios. Continue the great work you are doing, because you are beginning to challenge all the leading entrepreneurs of the world to think differently. And I'm glad I'm a small part of helping people think differently. Thank you very much. God bless you and good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Thank you.